Hi, Justin. How are you?
Hi, Peter. Sorry to keep you waiting there.
No, no, that's okay. That's quite okay. Sounds
Good.
like you're a man in demand, so
Well,
that's good.
for this morning, I am.
Are you're in England? Is that where
I am.
you're
Yeah.
residing? Yep.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Adelaide, and I'm with 3D Radio, who are a community radio station here in Adelaide. So thanks for taking the time. It's always a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, to speak to someone such as yourself on such a, I guess, small station such as ours. You seem to like to collaborate quite a lot
Hmm.
with people. What is it about collaborating that you love?
Well, I mean, when I started out, I was playing in a band. That's a form of collaboration. Just, you got to make a band with somebody. I'm not much of a singer. I can kind of roughly sing. I'm getting better, but I'm not. I've never really thought of myself as a singer, and so I need to play with people. So then it's the question of, well, who am I going to play with? And I've got pretty broad musical tastes, and there's never been a kind of plan for me exactly. I've never worked out, okay, this is how my career is going to go. It just I meet people and opportunities suggest themselves, but I'm always I mean, it would be a good idea if years ago, if I'd have sort of written some pop hits and or I'd written a Christmas novelty song. It never, I would like to, but I can't. All I can do is the stuff that I do. And it's because it's the music I love. It's the music that really resonates with me. When I try to do something that doesn't really resonate, it's no good. It's just useless. So it's the things that, where I'm playing from the heart that are the ones that work, which is interesting. It's quite nice actually to have discovered that people can tell whether it's authentic or not. And so the authentic things I do are the ones that people that get me booked to do gigs around the world. And so, but I suppose I am endlessly curious about different forms of music. I like learning new things, and I'm constantly searching for some music that's really gonna just be amazing, that's really gonna transport me. That's what I want. So I'm born in 61. So in 1977, that makes me 16, right? And I was lucky to be in England at that time. And what a brilliant time. I mean, sometimes I think, well, if I'd have been 10 years older, then 67 would have been a really good time to be in London as well. That would have
Yeah,
been amazing.
yeah.
I would have seen Hendrix, and I would have been around for all those Beatles albums. But still, 77 was pretty good. It was so exciting. We had so many music papers, weekly music papers, really great DJs on national radio. So there was John Peel on BBC Radio 1 every night, from 10 until 12, playing some crazy music. And what he was doing, with our generation was playing all the latest punk and post-punk stuff, but then he was relating it to reggae music, relating it to old psychedelia, even old blues music. So he'd throw in a Captain Beefheart track, or a track by Can, or some heavy dub music, along with the punk. You'd go and see the Clash, and there would be very heavy dub music playing for hours before, and then each band you saw had its own style and its own clothes, its own sort of whole vision of the universe. So bands like, you'd go and see a band like the Fall, or Elvis Costello, or Ian Dury and the Blockheads, or the Specials, or Dexys Midnight Runners. All those bands I saw in their very first incarnation. And so it was a very, very exciting time. Public Image Limited it was amazing when they came up with a whole new kind of sound.
Mm,
And of course, we understood that Jar Wobble was referring to dub bass, even with his name
mm.
and that sound. And so, that kind of slightly harsh kind of thing of punk, it was like, oh no, we can get somewhere bigger and heavier with that dub thing, you know, more
Yeah.
musically with a bit more depth to it, you know. So I was interested in that. Then I read on some sleeve notes somewhere, Joel Wobble had written some sleeve notes and he said something about Arabic music. Now that was a light bulb in my head because I had grown up in the Arab world and I love those Arabic rhythms and those sounds, you know, but I didn't really know how it related to the music that I was playing or listening to, the punk music. But here was the guy who saw some sort of connection. So I thought, I must meet this guy because in London at the time I was playing in bands. I didn't know anybody who was interested in Arabic music. Like, what? That was sounding really weird. So and then it turned out, you know, a year or so later, somebody offered me to do a little gig in a pub somewhere, and the percussionist had played with Jar Wobble. And the percussionist who was called Neville, and so I went to Neville. I said, "So you've played with that Jar Wobble character, haven't you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I was like, "He likes Arabic music, doesn't he?" He's like, "Yeah, he's always going on about Arabic." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, I really like Arabic music as well, you know." And, you know, I showed him you know, I could play a couple of scales on my guitar. You know, I like this kind of sound. He's like, "Oh, yeah, right." 2 weeks later, I get a call. It's Joel Wobble with his strongest Cockney accent I've ever heard say, "All right, Justin, yeah, I heard you like Arabic music." And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, do you want to come and have a jam? I've got a tour of Holland coming up." And he was needing a guitarist. So we went along for a jam, you know, and at the end of the evening, he was like, "Oh, right, oh," you know. And I was like, "Well, so we're going to do it?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And so I'd got the gig, you know. So that was great, you know. So Wobble with his heavy bass lines, but this kind of post-punk approach. And then I started to play these kind of slightly Islamic scales over the top. We met a girl singer, Natasha Atlas, who started singing, and that was Joe Wobble, Invaders of the Heart. We
Wow.
played at Woe Adelaide in, I don't know, maybe 91 or something like that, 92, I don't know.
That is such a fantastic recount, and thank you so much. I'll just quickly call out for those listening. We're talking with Justin Adams, who's coming to Wome Adelaide and performing with Mauro Durante. I'm not sure if I've
That's
pronounced
right.
it correctly.
Yeah, very good.
He's from Italy, and I won't even begin to try and pronounce his band. But I've seen them at Wome Adelaide as well, and we've seen you
Well,
as
you can
well.
say CGS, you know.
CGS,
Yeah.
CGS, and you've previously been at WOMAD as well with Jewel Day, yeah,
Jewel Day Camera.
that Jewel Day camera. Back in, I think it was around 2009. I think. I mean, my mind was blown when I first saw a band like Tanarawan, and the sort of sounds and the things that they were doing. What has drawn you towards that kind of music?
Yeah, so there's partly, you know, just the circumstances of my life. So I happened to grow up in the Middle East for some of the time. So I think that attuned my ear to sort of Arabic sound. And then, you know, through the punk thing, getting into reggae. From there, I started really researching a lot of Black American music, and so really starting to get into R&B, soul, blues, you know, and then understanding that the blues was the roots of all rock and roll, and then understanding slowly that, you know, the blues didn't come from nowhere. It came, you know, there were things that came from very clearly from West Africa as well as from Celtic music, you know, Irish and Scottish music, but largely African things. The kinds of music that really gets me going, you have a set rhythm which just goes round and round and round, and it's repetitive, and the rhythm's normally got a name. It's like, you know, whether it's reggae or ska or rumba, or, you know, in Arabic it's, you know, maksum or rai, or, you know, and it's a rhythm that everybody knows and everybody can dance to, and it's polyrhythmic, which means it's different rhythms which go together, and it's like a rhythmic conversation, and you can dance to it. And then from that you have a song that goes over the top, which can be partly improvised, and you're really speaking to the audience, and it might have call and response in it, you know, and then the soloist can improvise over the top, and the feeling is often the one that I like. The feelings is slightly kind of bittersweet. It might be like a lament, singing the blues, like, oh, it's a cry of pain. But then through that and through the rhythm, it becomes transcendent and joyous. So I find that in blues, I find that in reggae, I find that in flamenco music, I can find it in Irish and Scottish laments. I can find it in all over North Africa. I can find it in Egypt, Greece, Turkey. I can find it in Central Asia. Desert blues you're talking about. I mean, that was an amazing experience for me. I was invited to go to Mali, which I was aware of was a country where a lot of amazing music that I'd heard, people coming to England, Ali Farka Touré, or the great kora players. Somebody invited me to go to Mali. I went, absolutely soaking up music when I was there. But when we were there, we heard a couple of guys playing guitars, a kind of music that we hadn't exactly heard before, but it related to lots of things. So it was a bit like Ali Farka Touré. It was a bit like some of the Moroccan music I'd heard, a bit like some of the Sudanese music I heard, but it had something bluesy about it, and it had something almost like a kind of rebel reggae kind of Bob Marley sort of feel. And we were like, what is this music? And they were like, well, it's not our music, it's the music of Tinariwen. They're a big band from the north of Mali, but because of war, they've never traveled anywhere. So they were a band that were, when I first heard about them, they were unknown in the West. They'd never toured in the West, but they'd existed for about 15 years out there, just known amongst the Tuareg people. And it was because they were completely involved in a political struggle. They were a totally political band, and they were like the voice of their people, hugely important, but not known outside of their culture. So the French guy that I was with then spent 2 years launching a project where he got funding to take a group of 15 or 20 of us out to go and meet this band. And we took recording equipment out to the middle of the Sahara Desert, and we went and met them, and they were all in different places. They weren't really working as a band because it's such a poor area that had been so messed over by drought, famine, corruption, disease, war. Really, really a non-functioning part of the world, but with a very, very strong, deep culture, really cool people. So we went out there and spent a month, getting to know the band. We made their first album, which was called Radio Tisdas Sessions, and it was an amazing thing. And their music was so powerful, sitting around the desert fires in the Sahara Desert with those guys playing. And their music, musically, it was great for me because I loved the rhythms and the melodies, but it also had this significance because it was the voice of their people, and Ibrahim from Tinariwen is it's no exaggeration to say he's a Bob Marley of his people. It's that important that his word, his words are that sort of powerful, and really, I'm very honored to have worked with a guy of that stature. Incredible.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. You tell a great account of things. It's just so good. We haven't even got on to Mauro Durante. I did actually watch just a couple of clips of yours just on YouTube playing live. There is, just for two people, incredible energy. That must have been quite an amazing experience to collaborate with him.
I mean, when we started the idea of making a project together, both Mauro and I had come from playing in bands with lots of musicians. And, so when I was playing with Robert Plant, we had a keyboard player, another guitarist, bassist, violin player, drummer. So it's a big old sound, and his band CGS, same sort of thing. So we started writing material together, Mauro and I, thinking we might need a bassist and a singer, or maybe a drummer as well. But when we started playing together, we sort of thought, we started recording bits on our phones and just saying, this actually sounds pretty good, just the two of us, And for me, one of the models was music. There's recordings of blues from like the late 20s, maybe Robert Johnson, Son House, this kind of stuff. Nobody ever says, oh, Robert Johnson would have been better with and a drum kit, and a bassist and backing singers. It doesn't need it. You know, it's a propulsive, exciting, you know, some of the best recordings ever made, you know, and it's just a guy and a guitar. The
Mm.
guitar is a big sounding instrument. And when you're recording, the more other instruments you add, the smaller the frequency range of each instrument, you know, because you've only got a certain amount of, it's like a painting, you know, you've got this much canvas, you know, and so if you're just going to paint one thing, it's going to be big and very strong, you know. But if you paint a million things, they're going to be that much smaller. And, you know, so by allowing ourselves all that space, you know, you can make the sounds big. And both Mauro and I are very rhythmic players, you know, so we don't have a problem with, you know, giving the groove, you know, we can really make a groove to make it swing and make it danceable and so yeah, but it's very exciting playing live with him because you know when I was playing with Robert Plant, to be honest, if I stopped playing for a few bars in the middle of a song, nobody would notice, you know, because there's such a lot of other noise going on. But in this band, you know, where there's just the two of us, if I go bang bop, you can hear exactly that, you know, and it makes a difference if I go bang bop or bom 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 bom, it makes a massive difference, you know, which am I doing? So, you know, every note I play, the length I keep each note, the tone. So it's very exciting, you know. Can be terrifying because you know you've got nobody. You've got nobody backing you up, you know. Much.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. Well, you're going to be at WOMAD Adelaide performing on Saturday and Sunday. So it's going to be so great to have you guys here, and I really look forward to seeing the performance on either or both of those days. And I hope you have a really great time. I noticed that you're here pretty much just for WOMAD, and then to New Zealand, and then you're off, I think, to Tennessee. I think I saw.
Yes, we're going to Tennessee. You're right. India in between. So before I go to Australia, I'm going to India to do a project in Rajasthan, which is amazing.
You're living a wonderful, rich life, Justin Adams.
It's been. I know. I do feel very blessed. Actually, I've got to say, I really do.
Well, thanks so much again for taking the time and letting us get to know you a little bit more. I think it's been a really great chat. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Nice to meet you as well. See ya.